Welcome to this live stream from Windows on the World, windowsontheworld.net. New show live every Sunday, 9:30 p.m. We don't post much on YouTube anymore. You'll get the odd trailer and the odd live stream. And as I haven't shown my face for a while, I thought it'd be a good idea. And we can have a chat, put some stuff into the messaging box. And I'm here with Will Rowlands, and we had such a good time when we were discussing global policies, stuff like that last time. Hang on, I've got to get rid of something here because I can hear myself being played back. So I'm just going to get rid of my... Yeah, I'm playing on... Oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm playing on YouTube. So I've got to turn that off. How unprofessional. You see what we were doing? We were mucking about, weren't we? We've been mucking about and chatting about things. So welcome, everybody. Yes, we're going to get onto some interesting stuff this week. We're going to be talking about lots of different topics. So put your thoughts into the chat box. And I wanted to point out a really interesting interview that I did with Stephen Strong of ForgottenOrigin.com. That's Stephen and Evan Strong. And they are a father and son team from Australia, New South Wales. And they've made some amazing discoveries over the years. And we did a preview of the world's first pictorial language, which was uncovered by an Australian historian and archaeologist called Frederick Slater. And that's on our Odyssey channel. So what I'd like to point out is that all of our content is on Odyssey. And the link is in the chat box here. So please subscribe to us on Odyssey and Spreaker. And you can do that on the homepage at windowsontheworld.net. So, yeah, tonight we're going to talk about some things that are in the news. And it seems like the online harms bill is going to become a reality. I've just seen a story which was in an article from Sky News. And the title was Bonnie and Clyde with a Box of Matches. And they described themselves as the first male-female arson team. And they have crossbows, converted rifles, and they're preparing for the imminent collapse of society. And they're part of a group on Telegram called Constitutional Common Law England. Winning! Right. And one of their comments on, alleged comments on this Telegram site was, we need a sabotage team and we want to blow something up. Do you feel like you need to set something ablaze? And they've been kind of criticised of having racist, antiseptic, anti-authoritarian views. They want to hang MPs for treason. They support the killing of MPs and the Joe Cox event. And all of this is like a setup for what's coming, really. I've seen another article where there's some UN ambassador to the UK who's actually calling for the introduction of the online harms bill to get rid of all the hate. And of course, this ties into the empirical takeover that Britain was part of, and they have to use all the same language. Have you been aware of all this, Will?
Yeah, I know that the online harms bill has been, carrying on in the background. I didn't realise how close it was to actually becoming a reality, but I've kind of always assumed it would, and that any online petition, which you can sign if you want, but I think if it's a solid agenda item, it's coming, and a million petitions wouldn't affect that. So yeah, I didn't realise how close we were.
Yeah. Well, this has been coming a long time. I mean, we've lost so much content off YouTube, which is why I don't really post anything on here. And in a way, you do lose a certain amount of people, but also in a way, are those the sort of people that you need to have listening to the shows? Because are they the sort of people who contribute? Generally, I think people flit about on YouTube, and a lot of the stuff that I see that gets a lot of views on YouTube is particularly useless. So I think that the best stuff, you have to go and find it, really. I mean, in our Discord group, people post stuff that I'm not aware of at all. Like there was somebody posted a podcast by some American lawyer, and it's really good stuff, and you can learn from it. That's the point. This is about, this is a lifelong learning process. I don't know whether it's the same for you, Will, but I mean, it's fun excavating through the whole morass of disinformation, but it does get boring, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I also think there has been, some really good stuff on YouTube, but it gets weeded out in the end. And like you say, that the people on YouTube, it's not the, I suppose that's the audience you want to cultivate, and you've got a much more savvy sort of following stroke audience in the Discord server. I mean, it's some really good stuff there. And yeah, there are loads of brilliant podcasts, and there's tons of good information out there. But it's getting harder and harder to find it on YouTube, and some of the view counts are just ridiculous. They'll they'll say this.
That always happened. I mean, I think there was a point where there was a lot of really influential and interesting stuff coming out on YouTube, even when it was like Google Video. I mean, that's like going back so long now.
Yeah, 2006.
That was the place where you could find stuff. But obviously, it was being funneled into what we've got now. That's the whole point of it. The other thing that really annoys me is that there's adverts all over everything. You can get rid of those. But we use Odyssey mainly, which will probably go the same way. But it's like a blockchain thing. It was actually recommended by someone who listens to the show, and I think it is the right place for us, really. So we do prefer people to go over there, and everything we've ever done is on there. I mean, YouTube actually find things from years ago and give community strikes for things that that should have got a strike at the time. I mean, or hope not hate going over my stuff in their lunch hour, when they got no one else to attack.
That is strange, because if it was AI, you would imagine it would be done in a timely manner, like you say. It almost it does sort of suggest a human hand, or maybe the human presses the button and then the AI goes and has a look. But for you get multi-year gaps between strikes. Ridiculous.
Yes, but it's it's easy to get a channel taken down, as we know, but I only keep this one really to advertise stuff, so it's good that people still kind of come to it sometimes. But the hits have dropped on this because we're elsewhere, and I think that now people know that we're on Spreaker. The Spreaker audience is pretty good, because the whole idea of when we got shut down on YouTube was that I would direct people to the Spreaker channel and to the Odyssey channel and use YouTube to do that, because all the Spreaker shows you to go on here. I'm not just talking about myself here, Will. I'm talking to the people out there who may not know all this, you see.
Fair play. Also, your YouTube views might be well down, but they're not to be trusted. So they might.
I think it's because we've abandoned it, you see. And it's all the things I say about it. I say we don't post anything of any importance on here. So they probably don't like that either, do they? But this online harms thing looks like it's coming in. So I think that people do need to get away from relying on these big platforms and start, looking for stuff. Because if you look, you will find it. I mean, it's amazing, really, with the shows, because the last few I've done have all been really about some steering that was going on. 1700s went into the Enlightenment and what that was all about. And people have sent me some amazing stuff from abroad that I just would not have found. And I think that's the great thing about this, that it really is all about information that you want to look at years later, whereas a lot of the stuff that just gets put out is obviously it's time sensitive. But I don't think Windows on the World is time sensitive, because the stuff we were talking about 15 years ago is actually now still relevant. And I've got a document here, Will. I think we talked about this before the show. Because I was back in England recently, and there's a document here which I had from 2011. It's from the Justice Clerks Society. I'm going to take that folder off so people can see it. I don't think you can see it, but it's from the Justice Clerks Society, and it's a response to Free Man on the Land. And basically, it's telling the courts not to engage with it. And I'm going to do a show on this, so we won't go into it tonight, but it's amazing that people are still trying to, they're making money out of selling fake remedies, and the people are still thinking that this is going to work in any way, because the system's been completely changed. We're in a communitarian law system now. Common law's been pretty much eroded.
Like I said to you before we went live, I didn't know much at all about this common law and the fake remedy gurus until COVID, and then there were whole Telegram channels, and instantly like 5,000 members, 10,000 members, every one of them with a so-called solution. And Matt Hancock's been arrested. We've held a trial.
Oh, the Matt Hancock arrest. That was done by email, though, wasn't it? So obviously it wasn't really going to get anywhere, because the whole point about it was when you looked into it, nothing really happened, and nothing ever happened to put it into the frame to happen.
It's just the wishes of a few people from their bedrooms. You know, it's like this is we're going to do this to Matt Hancock. Okay, yeah, people are a bit delusional. So yeah, I'm sure there's something interesting there, but I don't think it's effective, and that's
No, I mean, I think the whole point of this, I did an article years ago called Freeman versus Legal Fiction, because believe it or not, I was one of the first people in the UK to try it out. But because it doesn't work, I didn't go around trying to sell it everywhere.
yeah,
Otherwise, I could have made a lot of money,
yeah,
you know, like they're still doing, which I can't believe that people are still sort of following it, because the thing is, it's what you could call pseudo common law. They're using common law as a catch-all for things that don't work.
yeah,
You know what I mean? It's like everything that doesn't work is under this term common law, and that's how it's kind of ended. But it didn't begin like that, because I learned a hell of a lot from it, like the birth certificate stuff, you know, the registration. And we were talking just before about the Fidelity Investments in America do trade the birth certificates of the UK, but it's all about the GDP of the country. I mean, I found mine on there. I had a bond number and a QSIC number. So I was bond number 429. The fund number was 429. Fidelity Maryland Municipal Income Fund, with a symbol lookup SMDMX, and the QSIC number is 316448604. And that was in the mutual fund. And that's on Fidelity Investments in America, because I was given a trader's input to search, and it does work. Your birth certificate is traded, but it doesn't mean that it's got anything to do with you. It's about the GDP of the country, what you're worth to the country, and what the country's worth and the people are worth as the GDP.
Yeah. So what's the underlying security on that instrument is just a load of birth certificates and names.
Yes, it's a financial future which can be put out, and they can borrow money on it, but people invest in them because they are futures. Right. So in other words, if the GDP of the country's been going up and everything's okay, then that means the people are creating the wealth. So in other words, we are the gold.
Right.
You see, that's a simplistic way of looking at it.
I see.
In a way, it's how financial fraud is created with futures.
Yeah. Yeah,
you know,
I remember there's a quote, isn't there? It's like, Daddy, can the futures market be manipulated? And it's, son, the futures market is the manipulation. You know, that's the whole reason the COMEX was set up, so they could get the gold price down. And that's actually been admitted in some Bank of England documents have shown from the 70s that the wholesale gold price is massively manipulated. But that was what the COMEX was set up for. Yeah, it's financial futures. Bent. Very bent.
But I think that, you know, the Arrested Development is such a big part of what's going on. And I see all that stuff as Arrested Development, because if you keep trying something over and over again that didn't work 20 years ago, I mean, I'm quite amazed that people are still getting into it now.
Yeah.
And I think it's being pushed through these Telegram groups, which get, and you know, these remedy gurus who are just grifters. And it's quite amazing. I've had people contacting me, and I said, well, that's been on my website for 15 years. There's one called Are You a Pauper? And it's all about the Birth Death Registrations Act, but also the poor laws which preceded them, because the Workhouse Act was only abolished in the late 1800s, early 1900s. You know, the workhouse was still around.
Yeah.
And
I read that one. Amazing. It's interesting with the P on the passport. It stands for pauper.
Pauper, yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, actually, I found these documents when I went back to the UK, because they were all stored there. And I wrote to the Home Office, and they said the P on the passport stands for electronically readable passport. Well, that would be ERP, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. And they didn't know. I think that's the main point here. They didn't know what it stood for. The people who were in the Home Office don't know the occult reasons behind it.
Yeah. Yeah, they just know what they're told to say. Oh, you answer that question with this answer, and just repeat that.
The system has to work that way, because if you weren't a pauper and classed as a pauper, then you wouldn't have to ask to travel. You would be a
Yeah.
sovereign. So you have to be a pauper.
Yeah.
And you have to be a pauper to allow taxation and to be represented through the birth certificate as a financial future.
Yeah.
You can't be a sovereign, because if you were a sovereign, you'd own your estate. We can get into all this, but I got into it years ago, and it leads down many rabbit holes, which are absolutely fascinating. I used to get long Skype calls coming in from Australia, from Franco Collins, and we used to talk about this stuff. And it's fascinating, but in a way, it doesn't really solve the problem.
Yeah.
It gives you an insight into how things work. But because the system has changed so much and it's now fully communitarian, then none of this really means anything anymore. Because what we're seeing is that so-called public officials and authorities are doing exactly what they want to do. And this is what I've been trying to point out for years.
Yeah, that's true. So, by the way, I listened to your last two shows. I've been very busy at the moment, so I don't listen to them always on the Sunday, but I do get round to them, and I did enjoy you slaughtering that village idiot Sadiq Khan for 10 minutes. That was great fun. That was,
well, sometimes you can't help
Khan, and he is a creep, isn't he? He's a sinister.
Well, we can't say that, Will, because that's hate, and this is YouTube.
Oh, of course. He's like,
you've got to be careful here. You know,
a brilliant character who's full of mojo, because he was complaining.
That's right. He lost his mojo for a bit, old Sadiq, didn't he? And then he said that, you know, even his team weren't getting inspired by him. But can you imagine anyone being inspired? How can that happen anyway?
Yeah, imagine him with his mojo, you know, down the pub playing bongos with a party.
Well, it could be doing the old Muddy Waters one. Was it Muddy Waters? I got my mojo working.
Yeah,
John Lee Hooker. I don't know.
Yeah, John Lee Hooker.
You can see he's a secret blues man, can't you? You know?
Yeah. Oh, if he's got any talent at any musical instrument or sport or anything creative, I'd be amazed. But he's like the most insipid, charmless. He's like he's been drinking anti-charisma or something.
Like the charisma removal thing is quite popular, I think.
Yeah.
The charisma removal, because charisma used to be really popular, and now it's just become very unpopular.
Yeah.
So if you've got charisma, then you're in the moment, you're delivering something, you're engaging, possibly funny, but very convincing, and that's no good these days, is it?
No, you got to be more of a drone, I think. And
I'm quite negative as well. Being negative is very necessary.
Yeah. Gosh, yeah. Sadiq Khan fills all those boxes, and he's sinister as well. He's not completely a joke figure. He's there's a fella in my gym who he hates Sadiq Khan so much. He's a fella. He's Nigerian. He's a good lad, and he's saying he's calling me far right because I don't believe in you, Les. Nigerian fella, about 50. And he goes, "The man is a liar. He's a liar." And he's true. He just gets up there and he just tells these ridiculous lies, and he does it with a straight face. And he's creepy and he's sinister, but he's also boring and insipid. So well, I mean, the puppetry is the thing, isn't it? I mean, you know, ULEZ isn't him. It's an agenda. And once you say the word agenda, then all the people who criticize him will say, "Oh, that sounds like a conspiracy theory." Yep.
Because you said the word agenda, you see.
Yeah. Obviously, you've been on the internet too long, and you need an online harms bill to get your mind right. What do you think?
But I think people should prepare for that.
Yeah. I mean, is the end goal of that a sort of digital biometric login, so you need some permission to get online, or is it just to crush all the independent people who actually aren't boring and tell a little bit of truth, or both? Or
I think it's both. I actually think we're in a second version of the internet now. You know, they used to talk about Internet 2.
Yeah,
I think we're in it,
right?
Because the internet's totally changed now.
Yeah,
you know, you don't get those random things coming up at all. All is you get when you look up people who challenge the narrative is all the stuff that tries to debunk them. Because
Yes.
that didn't used to happen.
Yeah.
It seems to be a lot more controlled now.
I've noticed Google has been curated. You used to get like 1.2 billion search results, and now sometimes I've researched things really, when I did my book, and I'm looking at like the 90th page down, and then I get to the end of it. It's like, well, where's the rest? Like there was like there used to be millions of pages, and and no wonder they keep that algorithm secret, because someone's just saying blacklist, put that one down, and you can't have a transparent. Someone said, I think it's Richard Grove, Google's not a search engine, it's a hiding algorithm, and that's just what one aspect of the internet. It's totally changed. I think they let you have a play on it, and you see what it's like, and then this will be the same for. It was the same for Google, YouTube, and it will definitely be the same with this Chat GPT. Let you have a little go on it.
Oh, that's another thing. I think the AI thing there is to completely destroy history and reality.
Yeah. Well, like you said the phrase "the wilderness of the mind" a long time ago, and that's a massive agenda. I've noticed. We're supposed to start questioning what is and isn't real, and the AI is gonna. I can see that there will be a sort of swathe of online impersonators, people stealing identities. It might even be able to replicate human voices, and then you'll hear that people got swindled, and that's another reason that you're going to need an online login and some kind of identity. But that was another thing you touched on in that most recent podcast was alongside you've got all this, you've got the dumbing down. I think that's pretty obvious the last few decades, and then you've been sort of fluorided, and then you've been like Alzheimer's, and you've been autism, and they're making people more stupid, and then they normalize the old mental illness. Nothing wrong with being mentally ill. Do you feel mentally ill? Have you got climate anxiety? Maybe you want to talk to one of our climate psychologists, and please admit that you're mentally ill. There's nothing wrong with that at all. So we're always being encouraged to not being able to trust your own idea, eyes.
That's the whole idea behind it. Yeah.
And then
I showed it recently was about that.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah.
And there's something that I'd noticed a while ago. This normalization of mental illness, and then when you mentioned this Springfield location in Tooting.
Apparently, there's several hospitals called Springfield, old mental hospitals. There's 3,
right,
all known as Springfield.
Yeah. I'd never heard.
It's really interesting.
And then but to have a new like urban development, but where one of the partners to it is like a mental health institution. That's just so weird. You normally have like your shops and your church and your school, and there'd be a hospital there. That was one of the things. But when the mental health unit of the hospital is actually like part of the driving force of this whole new, I mean, I just say beware anyone who does freely admit to being mentally ill, because if we do come into some authoritarian crunch in 5 or 10 years, and you've got an opinion that isn't popular with the powers that be, if you've got it on your record that you've admitted to being mentally ill in the past, you could be just taken away.
Well, it makes it a lot easier, certainly.
Yeah, there's no point presenting these people with an open goal
to challenge everything, really, but in a way which is within their system, because that's what we still have, a recourse through some kind of legal solution.
We still have the bones of it.
Of it, yes.
Yeah.
And the thing is that what I've found is that once you sound as though you know what you're talking about, a lot of these people who are trying to push will back off because they don't know enough to confront you. They know a little. And that goes from people in the council to the police to any high-ups within the system, that once you point out certain things, they will back off. And I've always found that very powerful and very useful, because the whole idea of forming an antithesis is that it becomes the synthesis with the thesis. And if you're directly challenging the actual entity and its credibility, then you are in a very strong position. And I've heard that that's worked in quite a lot of cases. I mean, because I've been doing this such a long time.
Yeah.
Even when people are trying to push the mental health card.
Yeah.
Because you can come down on that quite hard. Because if you know anything about the history of psychiatry and psychology, you'll know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And you can
where
cut
it leads.
through it.
Yeah, and you see this, but like you say, when you start pointing out hard facts, that's why it's so important to do your research and know your facts. And it's not like I'm not suggesting for a moment that you claiming that you know everything and that you're the expert in everything. But it's like when you know that 2 and 2 is 4, I'm not interested in 1,001 reasons why 2 and 2 is 5, because I know it, I can prove it, and it like mathematically prove it. And so, what was it you said in that last show? It's the 4. You got to have your mental fortitude and stand on your 2 feet, and also that involves not pandering to any of this shit. I won't call a man a woman. If she wants me to call her Bernard, that's fine. Call her what you like, but I will not say that you're a man, because then I'm party to this insanity. So yeah, you've got to keep it real, and know when you know something, just back it up. It's mental fortitude is gonna be so necessary in the next. Well, yeah, with this AI and the metaverse and all these things that are waiting in the wings to distort our perception of reality, you need to be on your game and stay sane, and that's going to be your best weapon, I think.
Yeah, because there is some really creepy things happening. I mean, what's going on around this online harms bill? There are people who are going to be set up, and a lot of people who are in this sort of alternative scene, I don't think they realize how insidious a lot of this stuff actually is.
Yeah.
And how they create these people who become these assets of the state, shall we say.
Yeah.
Who then become sacrificed for the common good.
Yeah.
In that they are part of an operation which may go live, and they may find themselves at the center of it, and they may find themselves to be the terrorist.
Yeah.
And that is so easy to set up. It's so easy to set up.
Yeah.
I've always been acutely aware that was a very serious issue. Yeah.
Yeah. They wouldn't have a clue it was happening. And then, all of a sudden they get whisked away in a paddy wagon. And then they're like these 2 unfortunates. What were they called? The Bonnie and Clyde of
the Bonnie and Clyde
comments. Like
yes,
they call it verbaling, don't they? When the police
Bonnie and Clyde with a box of matches.
Yeah,
there was a setting fire to 5G masts and stuff. That was the other thing. Yeah,
it's like you said, alleged quotes, because they seem a bit far-fetched to me.
Well, I think when the pudding is over-egged too much, it becomes rather obvious. I mean,
it does.
They did also find copies of works by Hitler, Goebbels, and Himmler. And they found Andrei Breivik's manifesto. Why would anyone have those? Well, I can understand people might read historic literature, so that would excuse the first 3. But Breivik's manifesto, Anders Breivik, and then showing sympathy for the fella in New Zealand, Tarrant, as well.
Brenton Tarrant,
not Chris Tarrant, obviously.
Chris Tarrant, going out murdering.
Well, he can't say that, Will. No, he wouldn't do that.
No, just got this vision in my head.
It would be a bit of a Tiswas, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I just got this version of him like mowing people down. It's you couldn't get that question right. Like lining up. Anyway, I think the police that's called verbaling. When the police they catch an armed robber in the act, and it's like, thank God you caught me now, copper. Else I'd have never stopped till I killed them all. Like, and that's presented to the judge and they say, well, there's no witnesses to say he denies it, but he would, wouldn't he, Your Honour? Like, I believe you, Mr. Policeman. Yeah.
Well, I've seen it in court. I've seen that happen in court, where the judge, in summing up, completely denigrates the defence evidence, and the defence evidence had already been withheld and buried, because in over half the cases that were submitted in the HMCTS report of 2017, if the defense evidence had been withheld or buried, and they actually just call it unused material. So your defense becomes unused material. And of course, the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Services, they don't work for the defense, they work for the prosecution. You try to get anything off them, it's really difficult. And they're meant to supply it. But that goes with the police as well. Things like interviews, custody interviews are often routinely withheld, which is illegal.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if I ever got arrested, I would, I'd say, right, I want the transcript of the person who dialed 999. I want the tape of the. You are allowed to request all this, and like you say, you got to crowbar it off them. But you can hold up the proceedings if it's not delivered, and you say, "Oh look, I've asked for these 19 points, and they've only supplied 2," and then someone will get on. I will send you some details of a case of a friend of mine who was done under the Dangerous Dogs Act, and I think I can sniff an agenda there. But someone was bitten down his street, and he's got 3 Alsatians, and he's got his neighbour who hates him said, "Oh, it was definitely that house." The police came and they impounded his dog for 19 months. It couldn't have been his dog because they are in the kitchen, and then they stay in his kitchen behind a locked door. There's no side entrances where they can get out. The victim said that she could see the dog come out the front door, but she was 300 feet down the street and would have had to be able to see around corners. And she repeated this three times. It went to Harrow Crown Court. He got a not guilty. But he was like a dog with a bone, pardon the pun. He knew all about the unused material. And he was that's why it took so long. He wasn't interested in going to magistrates. He kept he went for the higher court, and he wanted a jury. But he's a very canny. This guy's 77, by the way, and you should read some of the emails he sent between him and the police. Absolutely hilarious. He said, "I used to have some respect for CID in the 60s, but he's known to the law basically." But you wouldn't. They picked a fight with the wrong guy this time. But
I think that's a really good point about the fortitude thing, because if you stand your ground, things can change.
Yes.
But conversely, you have to be really careful about how you present yourself, and that is the key. They're always trying to push you.
Yeah.
Even to the point of police being violent, which I've seen. Really bad situations.
There's no level they won't stoop to. Yeah, they definitely they harangued this. Well, their idea of a joke was he would contact them to say, "How is my dog? Is my dog even alive? I don't know if it is." And they would give him the number of a call center, which they knew was just a recorded message. And that, thanks, copper. And then so his patience sort of gave way at one point, and he sent this brilliant email, which I'll send you. I'll send you at some point if you want to laugh. But PC King, the dimmest copper in the.
Well, they are, but that's this lawyer that I actually knew ages ago, and he worked on a case that I was a witness in. He said, "Don't bring the police into the court." I said, "I want them into the court. They've lied all the way through." He said, "Yeah, but they'll lie in court and the jury will believe them."
Yeah. Oh, they stand there in their uniform, they swear on the Bible, and then they lie through their teeth, and they say, "Well, who are they going to believe, you or the police?" It's sad, but
Well, the funniest one was when a kid had been done for throwing a paint bomb at the police. They couldn't. I was at this court case. It was years ago, and they couldn't produce the uniform with the paint on it. They couldn't get the color of the paint right. One of them said it was blue, one said it was orange. And they also got the fella's hair color wrong. He was sat there and he clearly had brown hair. And they said, "What color was his hair?" He said, "Oh, blonde." And they're looking at him. He had brown stubble all over his face. The magistrates are going, "What?" But that it's kind of funny, but it's paved the way for the whole of the system to be put into this communitarian mold now, where everything's done for the common good. So if you're deemed to be against the agenda or the narrative, then you are the enemy by default. There's nothing you can do about that. So you do, without sounding like common law Malcolm, you have to actually engage yourself. And it's quite difficult, but it does mean being very, very vigilant and making a record of everything that happens, everything that's said, recording all the phone calls.
Yeah. and then just hoping that the bones of the legal system, and that there are still a few good people who, who can. I, I did worry about my friend at one point. I thought they've surely they can't allow this to come to court because the witness was so bad. She couldn't see round corners. Also, the other thing is the foliage in August, which was when this happened. You can't even see the front door of the house. So she had to be lying. I thought they can't allow this to get to court, but they did. So I thought, well, if the fix is in, the fix is in, and his own barrister will, and he was aware of this as well. He had to keep a close eye on his own. He was going to represent himself, but he decided not to in the Crown. But he didn't really trust the barrister, but yeah, finally he'd done everything right. But the stress, 19 months, and
yeah, well, that's the
don't live
trouble
that
with
long.
these cases. They go on for so long, and the average Crown Court case is about 2 years.
Yeah, takes a while.
Yeah.
Did you? There was a story in Britain. It would have been while you were over here of police shooting 2 dogs, which they claim were dangerous. It was absolutely horrific. The guys, a load of police turn up. One of the guys has got this long rifle, and they're all screaming and shouting at the guy. And of course, the dogs start barking, and then they just shoot them. They just blow them away.
No, I read about that. That was ridiculous. But I think that when you've got that lack of discrimination within the police, you've got real problems. And what I saw 10 years ago was pretty horrendous.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot worse now.
There is. And I particularly think there's this anti-dog agenda, which I think will become
it's the anti-pet.
Anti-pet
so they
agenda.
want to get people away from pets.
Yeah.
And they want to get them into these high rises with other people who walk and cycle.
Yes, because in your smart cities, there's no room for pets, and of course they don't want you eating any kind of cows and sheep and stuff like that either. So
it's the zoonotic threat as well, Will, isn't it?
The disease,
World
of course,
Health Organization. It's the zoonotic threat which comes from animals.
Yeah.
So this is the point, and now the World Health Organization can basically impose these measures on national government. So there's no national sovereignty of government anymore. And this came out of a document in 2007 called A Safer Future. And I did shows on it a couple of years ago. And lo and behold, we now have that imposition where you've got the World Health Organization can call out a pandemic or a health emergency whenever they want. And that's in that document. And it said countries that didn't actually fall into line would be brought into line by the other countries, well, communitarian style.
Yeah. And funds will flow to those countries who are compliant, and there'll be sort of sanctions, penalties on those that don't, the Belaruses, the Mexicos of this world. But a lot you can see.
Yeah, but I think they've got a problem, because a lot of these nations are still fairly sovereign within.
Yeah.
You
said that about
we have
Bulgaria,
a different view in Britain of what's going on in these countries, but they're not as much of a walkover as many people would like to think.
Yeah. Yep. Hopefully this is just yet another reason why I think they'll fail. I mean, we were talking the other day, weren't we, about some of their ideas about transhumanism and AI is just doomed to failure because they're not as clever as they think. And
no, I mean, I think the thing is as well that all of this AI stuff, as we've said just earlier on, is going to destroy reality and destroy history. And that's no good, you see, because that means that civilization is in a decline, because everything that's happening now and everything these people are imposing is what happens at the end of a civilization.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, because the whole idea is that something will rise from it. And the people who are mentally functioning correctly, shall we say, are the people who should be doing it, because they should be creating and doing their own thing outside of all this, which is what I was trying to do for years. And now, of course, that gets encapsulated by the communitarian takeover, in that you've got all these organizations now encouraging people to have little places on the land and grow food. But that's exactly what they do in communist countries before the takeover, you see.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that what you're doing is with wholly sovereign and independent groups of people. And this is one of the main problems that I had in the UK over the past couple of years with the COVID thing. I lost some of the people who wanted to join in. They were people who wanted to go for a day out with other people holding banners. And I said, well, all that is collectivized.
Yes.
Because this whole area of protest was taken over years ago. I mean, I covered things like this weird women's march they had where they just said, well, we don't like Trump. And it was meant to be it was like a copy of National Women's Day, but it had nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
And so you had all these kind of yuppie couples with their kids, and they didn't know why they were there.
Yeah. Just get handed a pink
that was
hat.
funded by the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and Soros, of course, and lobbying groups. So people don't realize this is one of the biggest problems I had trying to get that over. That this thing is very, very simple. It's the infiltration of everything because there's something for everybody within this perceived system. But what it means is there's nothing for anybody.
Yeah.
So it's an imposition from the top downwards that masquerades as community. And that's all you need to say about it.
Yeah.
The word community has been usurped. So you have to take that back, not reclaim it because that's their language. You have to take it back to mean what it actually is, what it means to you.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I've been really covering in the shows. And I go into it from different angles because it's the most important thing, that this collectivization is coming out of the new age too, because that's me. Oh, don't be negative. Well, they're an infiltrator and they work for the police. Oh, that's negative. I said, it is negative. It's really negative what you're doing. It's completely negative, you know.
Yeah. People don't seem to get that I don't know, the truth is not, it doesn't discriminate, does it? It's just what is. And people can say, oh, you're so depressing, it's so negative and whatnot. But it's not biased, the truth. Also, when people say, oh, you're looking into stuff too much, you must find that depressing. It's like, oh no, I find it interesting, and I want to know how the world. Yeah.
Well, using your brain.
They're saying what they think they would be if they knew.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's. I think this is the whole way that the system works, though. This new system, especially because it relies on people acquiescing from all responsibility, having no need for intellectual input in anything, and just being hedonistic.
Yeah.
And that is what the whole of the social media thing's about. I mean, there is absolutely no point being on any of these things like Facebook and Twitter, really, when you think about it.
Yeah, I'm finding
when you really think about it, you should be out maybe organizing something or setting something up for the future, or having small meetings with groups, because it's small groups of people that do things.
Yeah.
It's never these big collectivized groups. I mean, they're merely to steer people, and that's what happens. And these people keep turning up, and they get more and more transparent and more stupid, and people have become even more dumbed down through that. But that means there's a divide, and that divide is good in a way, because the people that follow that certain path and the people who are almost the same as the people who've been taken in by government. So you've got the people who think they're alternative, but they're the same as the people who've been taken in. And you've got this other path. And I talked about that with Stephen and Evan Strong. You know, we talked about this sort of stuff about these elders and original language. We've been talking about that for a long time. And I did a show a couple of nights ago. It's actually, the trailer's on YouTube, The World's First Global Language. And it's about a language called Muri Gwalda, which is from Australia, and it was discovered by this archaeologist called Frederick Slater. Have a look at it. I won't go on about it now, but I'm talking to people out there. Really, it's well worth a listen, because it's really about the core of what things really are about. I mean, if we take language has been completely usurped and limited by this sustainable development vocabulary. And what you were saying, reclaiming, and all these sort of terms, sustainability, diversity, social equity, vibrant, all of this stuff is not what it appears to be. And that's the whole point. Language has been usurped, so it doesn't mean what it says. So if language doesn't mean what it says, then it's lying.
Yes.
And you have to get back to the truth. So you have to strip that away. And this first language was all about the truth. And what interested me about this concept was that they were saying that previous civilizations before the last 2,000 years, their whole purpose was the development of the soul, meaning everything about them, the development of everything. So that means that whatever you say has some sort of power. So you should choose your words carefully and not gossip, not get into distraction, and focus on reality. And these words that Stephen Strong showed me the other day, they were the first 10 words of this alphabet, which is really, really fascinating. So the first word means beginning, creator. Basically, they have a destination and a meaning. So the destination is what they are really about, where the whole thing goes. And the second one was air, breath, and wind. And air because you breathe in air. And of course, you have to be measured when you breathe in air. Like concentrating on breathing and all this sort of stuff, it focuses the mind. Then it goes into fire, pillars of strength, things that nourish the earth, that which comes from the river of life, our blood, fertility, water, the sky, light, the guide to truth, and the tree of life, actually.
Right.
Is what we are. We are the tree of life. So these are concepts that have been denigrated and ignored, I think. And I covered this in recent shows because the influence of Kabbalah has destroyed a lot of this stuff. And that's far too big a concept to go into now. But it's something that I've covered quite a lot because then we get this changing of reality. And this, when things go away from their central essence, then they become dissipated and used for other reasons.
Yeah, and that's exactly the sustainable development language in a nutshell. It's to subvert. Could Stephen put a date on this language, by the way? Does he know?
Yeah, we're talking at least 150,000 years.
Gosh.
But probably more. Because the original idea was the out of Africa theory, which a lot of people don't know has been completely turned over by the people who invented it. They say, no, it didn't work like that because life came out of Australia 400,000 years ago. But these civilizations have sprung up all over the world. It's completely puzzling because the more you know, the less you know.
Yeah.
And that is the real mystery of this history. We don't really know when these particular peoples were around because we can't date it that exactly. We just can't do that.
We can't, yeah.
Carbon dating is, these
recently
things,
I just watched that
sorry. Yeah.
What do you call his the fella he got all kinds of grief. He had a theory about it was a Netflix thing. It was in 8 parts. I forget the guy. Oh, Graham Hancock, that was his name.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen it or if you had any thoughts on that.
No.
But I watched it, and it's just like you say. The more you know, the less you know. And,
well, he tends to go for the flood at 10,000 years. He talks about these civilizations being part of one, which is probably true, but there's a lot more to it because his theories can get turned over by other information. This is the problem with it all, that the archaeologists only ever really find what they're looking for.
Yeah.
They're not open to what could be.
But the fact it was there, it is still interesting in its own right. I don't know how accurate they say. Oh, we know that another 85 meters down there's this because we've got this. They bounce sound waves, and that's hollow, and that. So there was a bit of guesswork there, and I'm not sure how great carbon dating is, and so take it for what it's worth. But it was interesting this theory that there was some, apocalypse, meteor, or something, and civilizations getting wiped out and starting again. But the idea that they were a lot more technically advanced than we would give them credit for, because we think that we're so great because we know how to operate a smartphone, and that anyone who lived hundreds of years ago must have been stupid and just crawling around in their own filth. And it wasn't like that. So,
well, all this stuff about us emerging from caves, and this sort of stuff, the whole thing about how agriculture started, it's just an assumption, really. I mean, of course, there's massive evidence of that. And they say it started around 6000 BC in Sumeria. But it goes back a lot further. And the stuff that's come out of Australia is bizarre and makes no historical sense with the accepted narrative. It doesn't make any sense at all.
I love that, but it's just the truth. If it's the truth and there's the evidence for it, the fact that we can't piece it together is relevant. It's there, like it was, and just accept it. So yeah, I'll look forward to listening to that show, and I must get his book as well.
Genius or Mischievous. Story of Frederick Slater, but they're going to put out Slater's original documents soon. And this fellow was
Slater being the guy, who was
Frederick
absolutely
Slater.
He was demonized.
But he wrote for the this Telegraph, the Sydney Herald, all the major newspapers had articles by him in, and he was the go-to person by the Australian government. He set up the original Archaeological Society in Australia.
Yeah, he was a star, and then he said something unpopular, and then he was
there was a global language, that seemed to be familiar in different cultures. So it was a pictogram type language, but then he brought in this definite start of civilization where it happened in Australia, and of course, the whole continent of Australia was not found by Cook. It was found hundreds of years before.
Sure.
By the Spanish.
Right.
And that's all in the book. It's by Ferdinand de Quiros, I think his name was, or something.
Yeah.
It's all new to me as well. But you brought up a very good point there about it's catastrophism versus uniformitarianism. So the social Darwinists always think of uniformitarianism, that the Earth has been stable. Well, of course, it hasn't. Because if you look at Pangaea, it's been smashed to pieces. If the Earth was one landmass, which it probably must have been, then it's been smashed to bits by comets, by earthquakes, destruction for millions of years. So the idea that it's stable is only acceptable in a very limited amount of time. That brings us into the Commons-Beaumont stuff, of course.
Oh, the Shattered Isles.
Shattered Isles.
Yeah.
And that was 1322 BC. A comet hit the mainland of Scotland, which smashed it from Scandinavia. Yeah. That's where it spread out from. That's what he says. But if you look at it and look at Doggerland, which is under the sea there, they've found that civilizations were there under the sea.
Yeah,
between Scotland and Scandinavia. So they were joined up, and then they were smashed to bits.
Yeah, well, you see how many islands there are in Scotland. They're
Hebrides, and
they're all literally smashed to bits. And,
I find this stuff. I mean, that's why I like to cover this stuff, because it actually opens your mind up, not just to what people would call infinite possibilities, but to the possibility that we are still looking for who we actually are, because we sort of genetically modified. We've had stuff switched off, and that language goes into this. That previously, the sapiens who preceded us had values which were intrinsic, honest, and about development of self, not about the advancement of the self, but self-knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's really what I think I've been trying to do with the shows over the years. It's like, as I say, it's a lifelong learning project, which I share with the public.
Yeah, that's there's not enough people treat life as a lifelong learning opportunity. Most people just stop at 21.
Yeah, that's a really depressing thing, I think.
Yeah,
that they attain a certain amount of knowledge which gets them through life, and then they stop. And I've always found that really strange, that they want to
Yeah.
just sit there and watch telly. And which, I'm not being overcritical here. I just can't work out why people want to do that.
Yeah, and how it's like you say, that the questions you're asking, they're so deep and profound. They're really interesting. That how could someone rather just watch a new, binge watch the latest Netflix? It's just such a such a shit way to live, isn't it? It's
Well, yeah, it's a really depressing thing to do, isn't
yeah,
it? To do that.
it
I
is.
mean, I look
There's
up
so
old
much to
movies.
learn.
Yeah. I look up old movies because I like to see what was driving society at that particular time and how it's led into where we are now.
Yeah,
So I actually don't watch them for pleasure. I watch them for different reasons,
yeah,
But I'm afraid I can't suspend my disbelief. So I'm terrible to go to the cinema with. And I'll
yeah,
often just walk out after about 20 minutes,
yeah,
because I know when I'm being mugged, really,
yeah.
or I feel that I am. And yeah, it takes a lot to entertain me these days, I suppose. But I think that's a good thing in a way, because it means that everything I try and put out. I know I'm talking about Windows on the World here tonight, but I suppose it is Windows on the World, isn't it?
It's your
I'm
show.
kind of catching up. I'm catching up. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of. It's a way of, yes, catching up after a while, because we used to do quite a few of these live streams. But I never want to put out anything that's of no use. You see, I don't want to just come on here and chat. Even now, I'm thinking of things that could be useful, and
Yeah,
hopefully there is some useful stuff in here,
yeah,
because otherwise there really is no point. But I've got very high standards about that. So
absolutely. Yeah,
I think you have to
yeah.
have, don't you?
Always thinking, I don't know how you do it. Every week there's a new show. I guess you've got a bit of a following, and you do get primed with some useful information, like and there's people dropping stuff into your laps,
Yeah.
which helps. But I thought, could I do that and talk knowledgeably about a subject for, like you do? I'm absolutely certain I couldn't. It'd take me about
You
a month.
probably could. I mean, I think the thing is, it's just a way of channeling kind of information and what you're good at. Because I think people have different skills.
Yeah.
But because I like editing, I love editing things and getting to the true essence of what they are. That to me is paramount. And that is where the simplicity is, because most things have to be seen in a simplistic way. Otherwise, it's pointless, because most things are simple. Otherwise, they wouldn't work. So you can get things that look complicated, but the layers of complication have been put on the top, or there's like subplots going on. But the actual driving force behind things, especially what's going on now, is incredibly simple. It's really simple.
Yeah.
In fact, it's almost remedial simple what they're doing. Because there's nothing clever about what the globalists are doing. Nothing's clever about it at all, because they're not clever.
Yeah.
They can only think in a certain way. But they've embarked on something. What they're good at is sticking to things.
Yeah.
They've got, this system now, this financial system is all under sustainable development. We take the whole of the world's resources on the back of saving the planet. Well, no one's going to rebel against that, are they?
Yeah.
They think.
That's it. And if
once
you
you've
do,
trained
you're
enough
just
people,
full of hate. And why do you want the Amazon to burn? That's
yeah, I know. It's all about being somebody who's not even coherently able to engage, and that's what they think.
Yeah.
They actually think that, which is really bizarre. So if you get the average person who sort of spouts stuff from The Guardian, they think they're really intelligent, and you miss the point completely, you see.
Yeah.
There's no nuancing at all. You're either with us or you're with the terrorists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you say, it's remedial level simple. Big land grab for all the resources. Pretend you're saving the planet. Yeah. It's and just relentless. That's where they are. Like, you sort of got to have a bit of grudging respect. They're audacious. They've got more front than Sainsbury's, and they just keep trying. They're not original as such. They don't have many strings to their bow. Most of it's divide and conquer. call people racist. It's quite boring and repetitive once you see it, but yeah, they will keep.
I think it's very
relentless.
insidious, though, and I think it's against the way most people think, because they're not used to their reality being reversed. They think their reality is presented to them, and they take everything at face value. So again, it's like the real and the stated goals. So the real goals of sustainable development have nothing to do with saving the planet.
Yeah,
absolutely nothing, and the planet doesn't really need saving. Anyway, let's not get into that, because I've been through it for bloody years on the shows.
Yeah.
But I thought we were going to have a laugh tonight, but it's been quite serious, hasn't it? Really?
Yeah, sorry. We should just have an hour where we slag off Sadiq Khan.
Well, that'd be boring, wouldn't it? I mean, everyone would be going, "Oh yeah, you and about 20 million others. So what? What's original about that?"
Yeah. So.
But I think it's been quite enjoyable, and there's some great comments coming up in the chat. This is just to basically show people that the shows are still going and we're still here, and things are actually getting better. I mean, I think the Protocols of Power was one of the best things, and it's focused everything. The Force They Fear, the stuff that's running under this ticker tape. Have a look at it if you haven't, because I like to get people's feedback on it. And what I really liked when I went back to the UK was that I met people who'd listened to the shows, and they were a really good bunch of people. We had such a good laugh. One of our Discord members came down from Edinburgh, drove all the way down to Devon, and it was great. And that's very encouraging. So I will be coming back to do some little talks, basically small talk. We don't want to be doing presentations now. The days of the slideshow presentation are pretty much over, I think. It's more like what's going to be useful now. What's useful? And of course, the history stuff. I mean, I want to do more on the heretics, do the screenings that I never did in the UK for the film, with the talks, with the whole evening. I really want to do that.
Yeah.
Work on
when you next get over, I'll come to one of those, because I didn't get to see you this time, but I'll make a point, definitely. Next time, Heretics are London screening, and I'll be there.
Yeah. Well, just Swinderby's just put in Devon. I thought Mark was in Bulgaria. No, I came back to England for 6 weeks. I was in London. I went down to Devon. Madeline from the Heritage Party put on some talks, and I did some extra talks in people's houses, which was great. So I'd go into someone's lounge, it'd be packed full of people, and I gave them the bad news, but they were still happy at the end of it. That was good news, really. But that was great. Anyway, probably round it up in a minute, Will. But thanks to everyone who's contributed here tonight. And this was just to let you know that we will be doing some more live streams. I've been concentrating very heavily on the shows recently, and I think these live things are quite useful. But I will be doing some shows on this document, this Free Man on the Land document, which was from the Justice Clerk Society of 2011. And I dug it out when I was back in the UK. And it tells you exactly how they deal with the common law Malcolms in the court system. So, and I think it might also be good to go over some of this occult stuff again, because there seems to be an interest in it, but there seems to be a misapprehension or misinterpretation of what it's actually all about. It's not like you're worth millions on the stock market. You're worth millions as a legal fiction, but it's not yours. It's got nothing to do with you. All this sort of stuff, which could be presented quite comedically, I think.
Will Malcolm be there?
Well, I think he might be. Yes, I think so. I think so. I'm very annoyed with Mark. I've turned my back on him and all of those people who follow that sort of thing. Yeah, it's so negative.
Not a believer. Believe harder.
The horrible thing is that, when you actually meet common law Malcolm, and they're even worse than he is.
Yeah, I've met one or two.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Okay, well, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me. Enjoyed it.
Yeah. Cheers, we've had such a lot of funny conversations. We'll probably better stick to the comedy next time.
Yeah. Let's see what I do.
I feel the need to embellish on some of the subjects that we talked about. All right, that was great.
Okay.
Just Stop Oil. Malcolm has joined Just Stop Oil. It would be great if we got usurped by the other side, wouldn't it? Because it'd be a great asset to everybody, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Unintentionally, yeah. Oh,
Right.
I saw one of those a video of some Just Stop Oil protesters. You may have seen it, where the van driver just loses his rag and he starts removing people from the street. And within 10 seconds, the coppers come and arrest him. And like, they don't do a thing about it. So that just shows you, it's like,
yeah, well, I mean,
they say,
these people
choose your side. Choose your side. It's like, yeah, they have, and it ain't yours. Like,
that's it. Well, Just Stop Oil is a City of London project, just as Extinction Rebellion is. We've been through that on the shows. I won't go through it now. But when you say that to the average indoctrinee, they just look at you completely blankly, because it's the total opposite of what they've been presented. But they never get it. They will never get, as I said, the real and the stated goals. They just don't get it at all.
No, they don't.
However,
I pointed out to one that Just Stop, I think it was Just Stop Oil, had it wasn't Rockefeller funding. It was one of the other big oil families, something that they could go and check. I gave them the link, and it's like, and so like they couldn't refute.
I think it was one of the Rockefellers. It was one of the Rockefellers.
Right.
I think. Yes,
and unable to refute it, they said, "Well, it doesn't mean they're all still, big oil men." It's like, well, I'll give you that evidence, and you can't get it. Then not really.
Well, they don't get that sustainable development and climate change came out of the oil industry anyway.
That's
it. Had to.
Yeah, they think it's evil big oil, but no, big oil's driving all this. A lot of these.
I think it's really funny though when
they're funded by EDF and the like. It's
they go anti-capitalist. I mean, it's so banal, the narrative that they're given, that they repeat.
Yeah,
but they're again.
Well,
we need to bring society back. We need to bring civilization back. Yeah.
One of the most underreported stories of the last 10 years was when Cristina Figueres says, the UN has a mission to replace, they call it the current economic model, which means capitalism, and to do it within it's the most ambitious project ever, and it's going to be done within a certain time frame. Now, she's definitely referring to Agenda 2030 there. And I've explained this to people and said, they're going to replace capitalism. And instead of saying, how dare they? No one asked me. What about all the sovereign countries, underneath them that are supposed to choose it for themselves? But they just go, oh, well, we don't really have capitalism. That's an even more depressing.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I know. I got into that. I went into a pub late. We were late, and we'd been to one of the talks. And we pulled up outside this pub and he was just closing. And he said, oh, come in, it's all right. And then he started off by saying he was an anarchist. And then the whole thing just went nowhere because he couldn't get what we were talking about at all.
Right.
And that is a huge problem. But I don't want to go into that because we are now over an hour.
Yeah.
And it would be good to draw it to a close and do this again. Yeah, I think you're right, actually. It was Getty. But the Rockefellers have been involved with that as well, haven't they?
Yeah, they funded one of the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, one of the Rockefeller Brothers Foundation has funded her, and she's Mrs.
Yeah. Well, they're into everything. Well, they regularly have big articles in the Guardian, don't they? The Rockefeller Foundation.
Oh yeah, there was a whole series
articles in the Guardian. Yeah, so they're driving everything to do with the smart cities. The smart cities. The whole of that habitat stuff that they put into the Guardian. Yeah, that's all.
So the Guardian's got a Rockefeller and a Rothschild link. That's brilliant. They've got a Rothschild family member on their board. And the best thing about the Guardian, which I only found out probably 2 years ago, it's all thought of as a trust. The Guardian, it's the Scott Trust Limited. That's just the name. It's just the name of the shop, Damn. So it's just a limited company, the Guardian. It's not a trust at all.
That and the Independent drive the narrative, don't they? The Guardian, Independent are the main drivers of the extreme narrative.
Yeah, they're policy. What do we? Yeah, they drip down the policy from the policy makers and dispense that, don't they? And then they get their little articles just put in there by MI6, which written word for word, I think, some of them.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing with this AI stuff as well, is these articles that they're actually so boring they're unreadable. Because once you put that AI stuff in, and the newspapers are doing it all the time with spelling mistakes everywhere, so they are undermining language, they're undermining themselves.
Yeah.
So it's up to us to bring the standards back up, I think.
Yeah, the old fortitude. What was it? Mental fortitude. That's
Fortitude, yes.
Got to just stand on our own 2 feet, live on our wits, and you know what's what and who's who.
Blimey, Will, that sounds a bit like hate speak.
That is total. Oh, I'll get you kicked off YouTube. don't worry about that.
Because I use this to advertise my shows on occasionally. But
Yeah.
I suppose, in a way, we've deserted this platform.
Yeah.
In all but the occasional live stream and a few trailers. Yeah,
The wilderness of YouTube. Yeah, all the good ones are going or have gone.
things ain't what they used to be.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Gaslighting
remember when
is
this internet was all fields. Yeah.
Great. I'm just going to read this out to finish off. Thanks, Mark and Will, for this worthwhile talk. Helps me to realise that I am not mad like some of my family and friends think I am. Well, I think that's probably quite good.
Club, mate.
If this is promoting good mental health and fortitude and innovation, then I'm all for it.
Yes.
Okay. And having said that, thanks everyone, and thanks for the brilliant comments. And we'll be back soon. So keep an eye on this. We'll be doing some more live streams because things have settled down a bit now. And do check out the shows every Sunday, 9:30 p.m. on the live shows page. And the whole archive, I'm going to put this banner up again, hang on a minute. I'll put that one up. Full archive information, winnersontheworld.net. Do subscribe to us on Odyssey, where all of our material goes. And the link's on the homepage at Winners on the World. So thanks, Will. That was great.
Thank you, Mark. Cheers.
Cheers. We'll do it again soon. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.